Caught my wife's affair with my friend, how I exposed everything and took a stand. Imagine discovering your spouse's affair with a trusted friend, not through confession, but by uncovering their hidden messages. Would you stay silent or confront them with all the evidence? They say trust is the foundation of every relationship. But what if that trust is shattered by betrayal so deep it changes everything? This is my story of uncovering a painful affair, exposing it in the most unforgettable way, and finding the strength to reclaim my life. It all started when I noticed subtle changes. My wife, Mia, had become guarded with her phone, distant in our conversations, and less affectionate. Our marriage, once filled with love and laughter, had become cold, like a stranger sharing my life. After countless failed attempts to communicate my concerns, I felt myself shutting down emotionally, our connection fading with every passing day. It wasn't until one night, when she was asleep, that I finally acted on my suspicions. After weeks of noticing subtle but unsettling changes in Mia's behavior, my mind became consumed with questions that gnawed at me day and night. At first, I tried to ignore them, telling myself that I was overthinking, that every marriage had its rough patches. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Mia had become distant, guarding her phone like it held secrets she couldn't bear for me to see. Her laughter, once so easy and natural, had become forced, and her gaze felt evasive, never quite meeting mine the way it used to. I'd catch her smiling at her phone, quickly dismissing whatever she was reading the moment I walked into the room. She was leaving for work earlier, coming home later, claiming extra meetings and catching up with friends more than ever. When I questioned her, she'd wave it off, her voice calm, almost dismissive, saying that I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining things. One night, after another cold dinner filled with silence, I finally reached my breaking point. She had gone to bed, her phone clutched under her pillow like a secret treasure. My heart pounded as I sat in the darkened living room, my mind racing with possibilities, each one worse than the last. I had to know the truth, whatever it was. It was as if I'd become a detective in my own life, searching for clues that could confirm or disprove the painful suspicions that were tearing me apart. I waited until she was fast asleep, her breathing steady and soft. Carefully, I slipped into the bedroom, my hands shaking as I reached for her phone. My fingers brushed against the cold screen, and I held my breath, knowing that the smallest sound might wake her. I quickly unlocked it, praying that I wouldn't find anything. But as I scrolled through her messages, I was surprised to find nothing unusual. No late-night texts, no unfamiliar names, nothing suspicious. I went through her social media, her email, even her browsing history. It was all perfectly ordinary, too ordinary. I almost felt a sense of relief, telling myself that maybe she was telling the truth, maybe I was just imagining things. But as I put her phone back, an unsettling thought hit me. What if she was hiding it in a different way, using another method to communicate? My gut told me that she was hiding something, and I knew I couldn't stop here. Over the next few days, I became hyper-aware of Mia's behavior, watching her every move with a sharpened eye. I tried to keep my suspicions under wraps, but I could feel the tension building between us. She'd catch me looking at her, her gaze growing defensive, as if she knew that I was close to uncovering something. One evening, as she was about to leave the house, I noticed her reach into her purse and glance at something quickly before tucking it away. A strange suspicion started brewing in my mind. I waited until she left, and then, unable to hold back, I went out to the garage to check her car. I searched every nook and cranny, my heart racing with a mix of anticipation and dread. Then, hidden beneath the driver's seat, I found it. A second phone. It was a cheap, older model, not the sleek smartphone she carried everywhere. My heart dropped. This was it. This was the proof I'd been dreading but desperately needed. Hands trembling, I took the phone inside and powered it on. My mind raced, a mixture of anger, fear, and heartbreak flooding my senses. I knew that whatever was on this phone could change everything. The phone's battery was low, so I quickly plugged it in and watched as the screen flickered to life. It took a few moments for it to fully power up, and those seconds felt like an eternity. When it finally loaded, I went straight to the messaging app. My heart hammered in my chest as I opened the first message thread. The texts were intimate, flirtatious, filled with inside jokes and pet names. Each message felt like a punch to the gut, each word a betrayal that I could hardly bear to read. It didn't take long to figure out who she was talking to. The messages were addressed to someone saved under a fake name, but the details, the references, all pointed to a man I knew well. Jack, someone I had once called a friend. Reading through the exchanges, it became clear that this wasn't just a harmless flirtation. They had been meeting up in secret, sharing moments that should have been reserved for us. My hands shook as I scrolled through message after message, each one confirming what I had feared the most. As I read their conversations, I felt a strange, surreal detachment, like I was watching someone else's life unravel before my eyes. The intimacy between them was sickening. They spoke of stolen moments, of how exciting it was to hide, to keep their relationship a secret. They even laughed about how clueless I was, making jokes at my expense. The betrayal cut deeper with each word, each message reminding me of the times I had trusted Jack, welcomed him into our home, considered him a part of my life. And Mia, the woman I had loved, the woman I had planned my future with, was laughing about me behind my back. As I sat there, numb with disbelief, I started to piece together the timeline of their affair. Their messages stretched back months, covering late-night texts, early morning rendezvous, and countless excuses that Mia had fed me. I thought about the extra meetings, the catching up with friends, the countless nights I had been left alone, wondering where she was, only to be met with dismissive answers. It all started to make sense, the unexplained absences, the guarded phone, the sudden distance between us. Every lie she had told, every excuse, played back in my mind like a cruel movie, each scene more painful than the last. The anger I felt was indescribable. I had loved Mia, trusted her, built a life with her, and here she was, betraying me in the worst possible way. And Jack, someone I had once respected, someone I had confided in, had been lying to my face the entire time. The rage and heartbreak simmered within me, slowly giving way to determination. If they thought I was clueless, if they thought they could carry on behind my back, they were wrong. I decided that I wouldn't confront her without undeniable proof, without the kind of evidence she couldn't deny or brush off. I spent hours collecting everything. I copied messages, saved photos, documented dates and locations they had mentioned in their exchanges. I wanted her to see, in undeniable detail, the destruction she had caused. I wanted her to feel the weight of every lie, every betrayal. My heart ached with every piece of evidence I gathered, each one reminding me of the trust they had shattered, the love they had destroyed. By the time I was done, I had a thick folder of evidence that told the entire story of their affair. I felt both relieved and devastated, knowing that the truth was now laid bare, but realizing that it would forever change the course of my life. Before I confronted Mia, I felt the need to tell someone, to share the burden of the discovery that had shattered my world. I called up a close friend, someone I could trust, and asked if we could meet. We sat in a quiet cafe, the weight of my secret pressing down on me like a physical burden. When I told him everything, his face registered a mixture of shock, anger, and disbelief. He listened patiently as I recounted the events, the clues, the hidden phone, the messages. Having someone to talk to, someone who believed me and validated my feelings, was a small comfort amid the chaos. He offered me support, reminding me that I didn't deserve this, that I had every right to confront her, to stand up for myself. His words gave me the strength I needed, solidifying my resolve to go through with the confrontation, no matter how painful it would be. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every memory with Mia that now felt tainted by her betrayal. I wondered how she could look at me, speak to me, live with me, all while hiding such a huge part of her life. I thought about the future we had planned, the dreams we had shared, and realized that they were nothing but illusions. The woman I loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. As dawn approached, I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. The shock had worn off, replaced by a quiet determination. I knew what I had to do. I would confront her, I would tell her everything I had discovered, and I would take control of my life again. She had taken so much from me, but I wouldn't let her take my dignity, my self-respect. The day had finally arrived. The day I would confront Mia with everything I knew. After hours, days, and sleepless nights of piecing together the evidence, replaying the lies, and building the resolve to confront her, I felt a deep, unsettling calm wash over me. I had spent too long in limbo, questioning my reality, wondering if the woman I loved had betrayed me with someone I once trusted. Now, I held the answer in my hands. Concrete proof of her affair, neatly bound in a folder that documented every lie, every meeting, every stolen moment she had shared with Jack. As the clock ticked on, I felt my heart pound in my chest, the anticipation building to a painful crescendo. I was prepared for the worst, yet the reality of facing her, of hearing her excuses, her denials, felt like a weight I could hardly bear. But I was ready, more than I had ever been, to reclaim my life from the lies and deceit that had poisoned it for so long. The sound of her car pulling into the driveway jolted me from my thoughts, and I took a deep breath, steadying myself. This was it. I could feel the anger simmering just beneath the surface, mixed with a profound sadness, a sense of loss for the life I thought we'd had. Mia entered the house, her footsteps light and carefree, as if nothing was amiss. She greeted me with a smile, her voice warm and casual, like any other day. Watching her, I felt a wave of nausea, realizing how well she had been able to mask her lies, to act as if everything was perfectly normal while leading a double life. "Mia," I said, my tone cold, controlled. "We need to talk." She froze, the smile fading from her face as she sensed the gravity in my voice. Her eyes flicked down to the folder in my hands, and I saw a flash of fear cross her face, quickly replaced by a guarded expression. She knew something was wrong, but she didn't yet know the extent of it. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, but I could see her fingers tremble slightly as she crossed her arms. "Why don't you take a seat?" I gestured to the couch, my tone leaving no room for argument. I watched as she hesitated, then slowly sat down, her posture tense, every inch of her on edge. I placed the folder on the coffee table between us, letting it sit there, a silent witness to her betrayal. She glanced at it, her eyes widening, her breathing quickening as realization dawned. This wasn't a conversation she could control, twist, or manipulate to her advantage. "I know everything, Mia," I said, my voice calm but laced with a simmering anger. "I know about you and Jack. I know about the lies, the sneaking around, all of it." Her face paled, and for a moment she sat there, speechless, her mouth opening and closing as she struggled to find words. I could see her mind racing, trying to formulate an excuse, a story, anything that might salvage the situation. But there was no escape this time. "Before you say anything," I continued, sliding the folder closer to her, "I want you to look at this. Every lie, every message, every meeting, it's all here." Reluctantly, she opened the folder, her hands shaking as she began to flip through the pages. Each page was a knife twisting deeper, each printed message and photo a testament to her deceit. I watched her face as she read, her expression shifting from shock to horror, then finally to shame. The facade she had carefully crafted began to crumble, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. She looked up at me, her voice barely a whisper. You went through my stuff?" It was a weak attempt at deflection, a pathetic attempt to turn the blame on me, but I wouldn't let her twist the narrative. "Don't try to make this about me," I replied, my voice cold. "I only looked because you gave me every reason to, because you lied to me, betrayed me, and humiliated me with someone I considered a friend. This isn't about privacy, Mia. This is about the complete lack of respect and love you've shown for me and for our marriage." She opened her mouth to speak, but I held up a hand, cutting her off. "Save it. I don't want to hear any excuses, any lies. I just want you to admit what you've done." Mia's face hardened, and I could see the gears turning in her mind as she shifted tactics. "I can't believe you did this," she said, her voice rising with a forced indignation. "This is an invasion of my privacy. You went behind my back, snooping through my things, trying to dig up dirt on me. How could you?" Her words stung, the accusations hitting harder than I expected. She was trying to make me the villain, to twist the story into one where I was the one at fault. But I wouldn't let her manipulate me. Not this time. "Don't you dare try to make this about me," I replied, my voice steady, though I could feel the anger bubbling beneath the surface. "I wouldn't have had to look if you hadn't given me every reason to suspect you." You lied to me, Mia. You betrayed me with someone I trusted, someone I thought was my friend, and now you're trying to make it seem like I'm the one in the wrong? She stared at me, her defiance faltering as she realized her tactics weren't working. She knew she had been caught, that there was no way out. But still, she tried to hold on, to find some way to salvage her control. Seeing that her initial approach had failed, Mia tried a different tactic. Maybe if you hadn't been so distant, she said, her tone accusatory. Maybe if you had paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have felt the need to find comfort elsewhere. Her words were like a slap in the face, each one designed to cut deeper, to shift the blame onto me. This was classic Mia, twisting the situation to make me feel guilty, to make me question my role in her betrayal. But I knew better this time. I wouldn't let her manipulate me into taking responsibility for her choices. So now it's my fault? I asked, my voice laced with disbelief and anger. You think I'm to blame for you sneaking around, lying to me, laughing at me behind my back? You think that justifies what you've done? She looked away, unable to meet my gaze. I'm not saying it's your fault, she murmured, her voice softening. But maybe if things had been different between us. Things could have been different if you had been honest, I interrupted, my voice sharp and unforgiving. If you had told me you were unhappy, we could have worked through it. But instead, you chose to betray me, to humiliate me. Don't stand there and act like I'm to blame for your lies. For a moment, the defiance faded from her face, replaced by a look of raw vulnerability. She looked up at me, her eyes filling with tears, and for the first time, she seemed genuinely sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered, her voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt you. Seeing her cry, hearing the sorrow in her voice, tugged at something deep inside me. Despite everything, despite the betrayal, a part of me wanted to believe her, to forgive her, to erase the pain that had settled between us. But I knew that I couldn't. The damage was done, and there was no going back. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, my voice hollow. Then why did you keep doing it, Mia? Why did you keep lying, hiding, laughing at me with him? You had every chance to come clean, to tell me the truth. But you didn't. You chose to keep lying, to keep betraying me. Her tears fell freely now, her facade finally crumbling as she sat there, exposed and vulnerable. I don't know, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I don't know why I did it. As I looked at her, the woman I had once loved, now a stranger to me, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I didn't owe her forgiveness, didn't owe her understanding. She had made her choices, and now she would have to face the consequences. You don't know? I repeated, my voice filled with a cold resolve. Well, I do. I know exactly what you did, and I know exactly how much it's hurt me. And I know that there's no going back from this. I stood up, my resolve hardening as I spoke the words I had been holding back for so long. I want you to leave, Mia. I want you to pack your things and go. This marriage is over. She stared at me, stunned, her face crumpling as the reality of my words sank in. She began to cry harder, her voice breaking as she tried to plead with me, to beg for another chance. But I had already made up my mind. Please, she whispered, her voice trembling. Please, don't do this. I know I made a mistake. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can try to make things right. I shook my head, the finality of my decision sinking in. No, Mia, I can't do this anymore. I can't live with someone who would betray me like this, who would hurt me in ways I never thought possible. I deserve better than that. I deserve someone who respects me, who values our relationship. Her face crumpled even more as she realized that her pleas were falling on deaf ears. She tried to argue, to beg, but I had already made up my mind. There was no more room for compromise, no more room for forgiveness. I had given her everything, and she had taken it all for granted. As she packed her things, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, anger, and an overwhelming sense of liberation. I knew that this was the end of an era, the end of a chapter I had once cherished, but I also knew that it was the beginning of something new, a chance to rebuild, to find happiness without the weight of betrayal hanging over me. When she finally left, I felt a wave of peace wash over me. The pain was still there, raw and fresh, but I knew that I was free. Free from the lies, the deceit, the toxic cycle that had consumed my life for so long. I was finally taking back control, reclaiming my sense of self, my sense of worth. In the days that followed, I shared the truth with those close to me, including Mia's family and even Jack's fiancé, offering her the evidence she needed to make her own decision. The support I received helped me start rebuilding, focusing on my own happiness, my future, free from the betrayal that once consumed me. If you've ever experienced betrayal, share your story below and let others find strength in your resilience. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories on healing and moving forward.